Lighting is one of the most subtle and complex cinematic elements you'll look at when analyzing a shot, scene, or film. When we talk about light, we're not just talking about illumination. We're also talking about the byproduct of illumination, otherwise known as shadow. Lighting is all about how light and shadow work together. A lighting ratio is an easy way to think of this relationship. The ratio refers to the relative relationship between the illumination and shadow in any given shot, or even the light and shadow on a single subject within that shot. Let's start with just a key light. The key light is typically the biggest and brightest light that illuminates one part of the subject and casts shadows on another part. If all we have is the key light, then we have a high ratio, or high contrast, between bright illumination and dark shadow. A high ratio like this creates a look called low-key lighting. This term can be sort of confusing since a high contrast, high ratio creates low-key lighting. Now we'll bring in a fill light. The fill light is appropriately named because it's used to fill in shadows. With just a little fill light like this, we still have relatively deep shadows and thus a high ratio, but you can see a little more detail within those shadows. As we add more and more fill light, the ratio or difference lowers until you can see lots of detail in the shadows, and there's not nearly as much difference at all between the shadow and illumination. This is a low ratio, which is called high-key lighting. Yeah, I know it's counterintuitive. Here's how I remember which is which. In my head, I just substitute fill for key. High fill equals high key lighting. Like this. Or this. Or this. Or this. High key is typically used for comedies and less dramatic situations. Back to Corey. Still lit high key. Let's lower the fill until we're back to low key lighting, which is easy to remember if you think low fill. See what I mean? Here are some other examples of low key lighting. Low-key lighting is associated with crime dramas, horror films, darker and more dramatic stuff. Got it? Actually, no, you haven't, because there's more. Filmmakers can also affect our experience and interpretation of any particular image or moment by adjusting the quality of light. Corey is being lit now with hard light, which means light coming directly from the source. Hard light picks up every detail and creates a very clear, defined line between shadow and illumination. And if you shoot it low-key like this, it can create a very high contrast look. It's not exactly flattering, but it's edgy and tough looking. Great for scary, serious, or tense situations. See what I mean? Okay, let's give Corey some fill. Good. Now, while hard light is direct, soft light is diffused. Diffusing light just means breaking up the light so that instead of coming directly from the source in essentially a unified straight line, the light is broken up so that it hits the subject from a variety of slightly different angles. Light can be diffused in all kinds of ways, including bouncing it off a board or wall, or putting semi-opaque material between the light source and the subject. Or even by filling the location with smoke. Not you. However you diffuse it, diffused light softens details, blurs the border between illumination and shadow, and, depending on your lighting ratio, can lower contrast and provide more subtle shades of gray on a scale between darkest shadow and brightest light. For this reason, the more flattering soft light is often used on glamorous stars, romantic situations, and lighter moments. And of course, there's a very wide range of diffused light, from super soft to practically hard. Got it? Nope, sorry, there's more. The direction of the light, in relation to the subject and camera, also affects the interplay of illumination and shadow. Most lights in most shots is aimed at the subject from about a 45-degree angle from a little above eye height. That's what looks most natural because that's where most light naturally comes from in our world. Lamps, windows, light fixtures, and of course the sun. It also allows for those places where our faces protrude, brow, nose, cheekbones, to catch light and cast shadows so that they appear three-dimensional. This is known as modeling. But the filmmaker can always diverge from this more normal lighting direction in order to alter the way we experience and interpret the character or situation. For example, there's backlighting. The light is now behind the subject, facing the camera. By removing all detail, backlighting silhouettes and thus abstracts the subject. Handy for threatening characters or for differentiating noble or superior characters. Sort of the low angle of lighting directions. Now, if we keep that backlight but add our standard key and fill light, you can see Corey's face, but his edges feature extra rims of brighter light. This, appropriately named edge lighting or rim lighting, is a common method of making the subjects stand out from the background, kind of like tracing or outlining subjects in light. Makes them pop. When lighting folks, known in the biz as gaffers, talk about three-point lighting, they're referring to the combination of a key light, a fill light, and an edge or rim light, which they also sometimes call a kicker. Now we can reverse the light source and place it facing the subject from the same angle as the camera. This is called frontal lighting. Now all the shadows that accentuated Corey's various dimensions are gone, leaving his features looking rather flat. Depending on your context, there are all kinds of uses for frontal lighting, such as making our normally beautiful heroine look harsh and unforgiving during a police interrogation, or accentuating the rather bland personality of a dim-witted or gullible victim. If you go all the way with this technique and remove all shadow, like George Lucas did here, you can create a prison purgatory that's so featureless and sanitized, it's scary. Speaking of scary, let's try lighting from underneath Corey, sometimes known as Halloween lighting. When the light is placed in the most unnatural direction, shining up at the subject from below, the normal order of shadow and illumination is reversed. This distorts the features, making the subject appear frightening or threatening. It's perfect for scary characters and unnatural situations. It's sort of the Dutch angle of lighting directions. It has an interesting effect on cast shadows too. Normally our shadows are smaller than us, cowering down on the ground where they belong. But reverse the light direction and you get these big, bold shadows climbing the walls. It's enough to make even Pee Wee Herman and cartoon mice intimidating. Ratio, quality, direction, lighting. Got it?
Wait. Yeah. I do. I've got it. I've got it! Yes.
We all know something. Yeah, video. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
You're putting, I think this goes here.
Who's going to be doing things?
In fact, I might not even just...
Strike all three of those guys.
The light comes on in action, okay? And then when the light comes on, that'll be my cue.
So we're gonna have to.
Camera's gonna be rolling with me rolling. We'll slate it and then we'll just let it back off. Okay?
And if you can find one that's got a nice straight line on it.
Listen. Well, would it work just to use
Good shot tonight.
Oh, yeah, video.
I think.
cut the lights.
Thank you.